I am so glad that you guys joined us here in Advocacy Arena again today. And I have with me here today a wonderful social media friend, Davina. And I love conversing with Davina about issues around democracy. And so I'm glad that she took a little time out of her day to have that conversation with me here today. So, Davina, please say hello to the Advocacy Arena audience, and we'll just kind of get the conversation started.
Hello, Advocacy Arena audience, and hello, Dee. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast. I'm honored to be here and to be part of this ongoing and important conversation that we have to try and draw as many people in and recruit almost as many people possible to the cause of preserving an important institution for any people that want to be governed in a responsible and accountable way. So I'm an immigrant to the United States. I'm from Australia, and I'm just so happy to be part of this effort to promote democracy and preserve democracy.
Well, I love that. And it's always an honor to have you in our conversations and our live shows that we do. And, you just told us that you are an immigrant from Australia. And so, how do you kind of compare the state of democracy, let's say, there, as opposed to here now, and the things that maybe you have learned from your home country that you can help to teach and inform others about with the state of affairs in our democracy today?
Oh, good question. Well, I see Australian democracy as being in a relatively robust state at the moment, but it's beset by some of the same ongoing problems that I think impact American democracy negatively. And that is to say, I can pinpoint it to one man, and his name is Rupert Murdoch. And he was born in Australia, but became a naturalized American citizen in the 80s with special appointment, I think, by Ronald Reagan, president at that time, who allowed him American citizenship in a streamlined way so that he could circumvent some laws preventing media consolidation by a foreign citizen. So you had to be an American citizen to be able to own as much media platforms as Rupert Murdoch aspired to own. And so he's was Australian, is now American, but he has his fingers in the media of multiple channels in Australia, as well as the US and, of course, the UK. And he's had a similar negative impact on democracy in all of those nations. That is to say, he disseminates propaganda that tend to benefit conservative political parties, conservative political figures, who then, once they get in office, he leans on them. He has the leverage to look for preferential treatment at a taxation level and at a subsidy level, and at whatever his personal religious agenda is as well. I think he's a Catholic convert. I think he recently became engaged to his fourth wife. She's a fiance now, but the man is not the most monogamous gentleman in the world, but he's still got that theocratic agenda of we must wind back the gains of women and minority groups. That whole sort of I'm not going to say all religious people are like this, because I know that's not the case, but a subset of some religious people really lean into a hierarchy of subservience that they want to preserve or regain. So my lessons that I bring to the table from Australia, they're usually not Australian lessons, actually. They're usually European lessons that I have from my background, that my parents were migrants to Australia themselves from different European nations. So Australian democracy, they try to push back against Rupert Murdoch, but he has wealthy cronies who do the same thing, who fearmonger about migrants, particularly using anti-Black sentiment and anti-dark skins, anti-not white sentiment, to create a sense of entitlement, as if there are some kind of levels of worthiness of being an Australian, and some people are to be looked at with suspicion, as if they're uninvited guests who've overstayed their welcome. That continuous underplaying of migrant contributions in favor of promoting this idea that people are having their rights trampled on by wokeness or by CRT. That same ideology takes root in some forms of Australian media, and it's very anti some parts of the Australian character that wants to have equality, but also taps into Australian racism, which is pretty long-standing and isn't that surprising for a nation that's also built on colonial acquisition. I don't want to sound too far left, but it is
Right.
the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And isn't it interesting that we have this one man who has created this ethos on 3 different continents, you know?
Yes.
And
Yes. unchecked money and power has a compounding effect, because when you can acquire the masses of money, then you can acquire the masses of influence, and that only seems to fuel his appetite for more power and influence. He never seems to go, yep, that's enough, I'll just retire and step back. Or there's he's trained his eldest son Lachlan Murdoch to be of a similar mindset. Lachlan's reportedly even more conservative than his father, although I find that difficult to even understand how that could be the case. And so his empire and his legacy is still there, trying to hoodwink as many people as possible and retain the conscripts for that kind of coalition / army of people who mindlessly vote for Republicans or conservative politicians, even when it's against their best interests at a pragmatic level. There are people who will vote because they've been taught by Rupert Murdoch's empire to gratify their ego by villainizing Democrats unfairly, villainizing minority groups, and villainizing Black people and women.
right. And it's interesting too that the vehicle that he has been successful in using is media. And it's interesting that these authoritarian tendencies tend to target media and education and the judiciary, initially, um, around the world. I think of, Orban and Putin and these others. And why do you think that is?
Well, it's the tools of influence. And I know that they're out there saying the same things about the left. They're like, look at the left trying to infiltrate education and media. The left has not actually been on the media ball as much as the right. They have been pretty organized in trying to defeat the cultural success of the left, because the left did succeed in orchestrating some progress for women and having the Civil Rights Act passed. So the people who used schools, the end of school segregation, as a spur to try and gin up support for overturning abortion, because they found that it wasn't actually that useful to publicly campaign against school segregation. Like, once the public accepted it, it became seen as, yes, that's the right thing to do. That's the decent thing to do. Stop discriminating against Black students and let them have an equal bite of the school resources. The people whose inner truth was antithetical to that, to say, no, they shouldn't be allowed to share schools with white children. They shouldn't be allowed to broadcast or showcase their own excellence. Like, we have to keep maintaining the hierarchy. People who, whether they knew it or not, were offended to their core by including students of all colors in American schools. Those people went, oh, it's more socially acceptable to say we are campaigning on the part of the unborn, and they adopted abortion as a public campaign to push for putting people on the Supreme Court and at different levels of the judiciary system to defeat segregate, to defeat the end of segregation through that way, through winding people up, and winding particularly religious people up to believe that there was this Holocaust of the unborn, using really graphic language, graphic images to say that there was this injustice being perpetuated against the unborn children, whereas really their ultimate goal was to extend injustice against born sentient children who had received legal protection, that they could have a bite of school resources, that their tax-paying parents would be allowed to send their children to schools with equivalent resources to white children. And I just have, I should have brought up some sources so I could cite the authors of, but I can name one author, Robert P. Jones. He has written some books about how white supremacy found a lot of legitimizing theology through some churches, and also the illicit use of pro-life, well, allegedly pro-life arguments to empower the people who wanted to resegregate American schools.
Yes, and currently we have a really aggressive agenda taking place here, particularly in my state of Tennessee, but really it's throughout a lot of southern states where there is a majority of conservatives, extremists in charge, and not only taking over the education, but infusing this religious ideology again, which brings in the abortion, the right to life ideology that they embrace.
Yes. It's a subterfuge, though. It's so interesting that ultimately they just want to reinstate hierarchies that had begun to melt.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, we need to put that water back in the freezer to make ice.
Right, like make America great again, like the recent law in Arizona that is going back 160 years. I just don't see how people think that they're improving something by going backwards.
Yes, well, that's a blow to the Republican Party to have something, a political step achieved that's that blatantly anti-women, because yes, that was a law passed in 1864 by men. I saw their picture on Twitter. People had dug up the illustrations of these original legislators, and they're these puffy white men who
Puffy. I love it.
Puffy faced white men with clearly no care or concern for women, and of course a whole different era of medical treatment. So you have an ectopic pregnancy, yet nobody knows what's happening to you, and you die. Whereas now the medical treatment that should be incontrovertibly available to women experiencing complications with their pregnancy, that healthcare treatment is now unavailable or a legal gray area to women in Arizona, who will have to find ways to reassure their doctors that they are close enough to death to be able to qualify for that one little exception in the Arizona abortion ban, saying that, okay, if it's a choice between your life or an abortion, then okay, that under that circumstance you can have an abortion, but not rape and not incest, and not just merely your health. Like if you think your health is going to be negatively impacted, maybe you'll lose the function of your uterus. No, that's not enough. You have to be about to die, and then they can legally choose to gamble with their medical jobs, because doctors have to consider, will I lose my job? Is this woman documentedly close enough to death that I don't have to worry that not only could I be fired from this hospital or my medical practice, but I could also face 2 to 5 years jail time for helping save a woman whose health is on the line, whose health and life is on the line.
It's amazing that we have to have these conversations today.
Yeah.
And the blessing of this horrific law is that they do have a Democratic governor who has made it very clear that she is not going to be upholding the prosecution of
Yes. Yes, the
doctors.
Democratic Attorney General and the Democratic Governor. But even then,
Hmm.
it has a chilling effect. So people who
Yes.
were trying to make those gray area decisions of maybe this woman's life is only 20% threatened, it just it makes our healthcare a continual gamble when doctors have to consider legal issues before providing healthcare treatment that they would otherwise straightforwardly be considering. What does this woman need to
Hmm.
maximize her chance to live, or just her health and the integrity of her bodily systems, her uterus, her heart, her liver, because all of those systems can be negatively impacted by a pregnancy that's going south. And it's not a definitive pronouncement that doctors can say, oh yeah, this one's going to be fine, this one's life is at risk. There's conditions that progressively worsen, and one of those conditions is pregnancy.
Exactly. And the thing of it is that, I mean, doctors have to go through a lot just to become physicians.
Yes.
And, to have to deal with these insane, extreme laws and fear of persecution or the inability to practice something that you have spent, a good deal of your adult life learning to getting approved to do,
Yes.
to have it jeopardized by one decision
Yes.
that the lawmakers and people in your state deem bad, or the wrong one. I see that as causing a chilling effect on the number of people who probably want to go into the field, or where they decide to practice.
Yes, people would be making plans to leave. And a lot of medical professionals marry other medical professionals because they have limited free time, and they date where they study.
Exactly.
So you think well, just some obstetricians might leave Arizona rather than be in that difficult position of having to second guess their treatment ideas for a woman going through something. That obstetrician who needs to now leave Arizona or feels compelled to leave could be married to a cardiologist. Like, it is creating medical flight. And when medical
Hmm.
flight occurs, then departments get understaffed and they close. So we just, what have I called it before? Pseudo-populism. When Republicans make policy decisions, or Republican elected judicial members create outcomes that cause so much pain for people that they hope they won't even be able to think straight because they'll be experiencing financial and circumstantial pain. Uh, yeah, that's at least it's going to draw attention to what the risks are if people decide to vote for Trump or a third party, or even stay home. Like, if you're not voting to keep to keep Biden, the pro-democracy candidate, in office, then you're facilitating the kind of fascism that seeks to manipulate people through appeals to the most irrational areas of their religion, the most irrational and anti-social areas of religion. Um, and I just found what Robert P. Jones's book title is called, and I'm going to share it with you, Dee, because I think the audience would like it. It's
Okay.
called The Hidden Roots of White Supremacy and the Path to a Shared American Future.
I will
Because,
definitely check that out.
yeah, I haven't even read it myself. I read his newsletters,
Hmm.
but I should get to the library more often to actually take out a whole book, because I've been less adept at doing that since having children. But it's a
Right.
habit that I want to reclaim for myself, which is reading a whole ass book. I hope I can say that on here. The closest I've come
Yes.
lately is reading Sedition Hunters, which is a journalist called something Riley P. Anyway, no, Riley something. And he collected a lot of the stories around the online sleuths who helped the submit tips to the FBI, and
Uh-huh.
even created apps, like used their coding abilities to create apps to pour through all of the uploaded videos and photographs of the insurrectionists who attacked America's Capitol building, the Capitol, on January the 6th in 2021, to try and facilitate justice for the American people against those who, incited by tyrannical Donald Trump, tried to advance his plan of undoing Biden's election victory in favor of installing himself for an unelected second term in office. And if you manage to subvert the results of a Democratic election to have a second term, then you don't rest at a second term either. Like if Donald Trump had succeeded with that plot, then he can just have show elections. If he'd managed to pull it together enough with all his various co-conspirators and the army of willing soldiers who answered his call to come to the Capitol will be wild. If he'd pulled that off, then he would have no reason to face the true results of an election going forwards. No
Right.
incentive at all. So
Yeah, and he was largely unsuccessful because he wasn't quite organized enough to do all of the damage and the things that he wanted to do. But they have a plan for that now because they have Project 2025 and he has his Agenda 47. So they don't plan to go in unorganized, and that is. A scary thought. It is also an energizing one for those of us who believe in
yes.
democracy.
Yes.
To get out here and to work to make sure that he does not have that opportunity. And, you know, he is the face, the avatar of this extreme agenda. But, you know, it is really people like, you know, you talked about early on, Rupert Murdoch and,
Yep.
and the billionaires and other people whose agenda who it belongs to and who are funding the front men like Trump and
Yes.
others to carry it out.
Trump is a great catalyst for them because he's a showman who, even if we don't feel the appeal personally, he definitely is charismatic to white supremacists and to people who don't like tax and to contrarians. There's a whole bunch of people under that umbrella of the Project 2025 agenda that appeals to people who want to exert more control over women and wind back the gains of the 70s in terms of the loosening of sexual morality and the changing standards of what gender you have to conform to, all of those things which threaten people with an authoritarian mindset who feel that more control and more order would be better, but end up causing chaos. And I'm always so keen to point that out to people that if you're in danger of being seduced by an appeal to a reduction in taxes and women being told to be less sexually active, then look at what happens to the countries that adopt fascism and that fall prey to, I mean, you can have left-wing authoritarianism, which is communism, or you can have right-wing authoritarianism, which is fascism. But the same outcomes of authoritarianism are mass death and suffering. And if people can just get a little glimpse into a little window into that, then that's to counter the seductive appeal of all those sort of agendas that roll into a coalition of self-serving liars, because they're so motivated that they will tell any type of lies to bring as many people as they need on board to win elections and to get power by fair or foul means, whatever they can get.
And there is that's the main goal, power in all of it. You know, it is not about governing. It is not about, you know, improving lives for a multiracial or pluralistic society, but power for a certain select elite group lies at the base of it all.
Absolutely. And that's why I wanted to share that book title with you before, just because even when I looked at it, it was energizing to me, The Path to a Shared American Future, to remind people that sharing is optimal. If you get tired of sharing, then you're tired of existing in a safe society, because fascists cause lack of safety for people. They hurt women when they promote their anti-abortion agendas, anti-reproductive health care agendas. There are women whose stories don't always make it to the media, who are either quietly suffering or trying to stand up and tell their stories as much as they can. But there's more women than there is space to tell those stories of people people asked to stay in parking lots, hospital parking lots, to bleed more, to pass more blood before the doctors will feel comfortable with whatever advice they're getting from their legal department in the provision of care to somebody who's bleeding potentially to death. So,
I mean, it sounds so barbaric in such an
yes,
advanced society, right?
yes, yes.
And I appreciate being able to have this conversation with you today, and I'm looking forward to more. I know this is a special day for you.
Oh, yes, it is.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you, thank
Um,
you.
and so I am going to give you a chance just to give us some kind of closing thoughts and leave us with some hopefulness and encouragement around democracy from, the perspective that you come from.
Well, yes, I will say that the path to a shared American future for me means to challenge and to be loud and to love harder than people can hate, because there's a seductive appeal, there's an intoxication to wanting to withdraw from sharing and being open and having a functional multi-pluralistic democracy, as you referenced earlier. There is some opposition to that, but I'm leaning into making the appeal louder and more attractive as I can, to say stand up for decency and for each other, and to shine a light on the return to barbarism that does attach itself to fascistic outcomes, like
Mm-hmm.
banning healthcare for women. And so what little bits I can do every day. I lean into the support and encouragement from other people who have tasked themselves with the same goal of preserving democracy, preserving a functional, accountable system of government that's answerable to the people and to acting in the best interests of the people, and not just advancing the ideology of some people who are more consumed by hate and contempt than they are by a vision of a shared future that uplifts the well-being and maximizes the potential of the children, the men, the women, all of us, that we can have when we uphold and support democracy rather than erode it. So
I lo-
that's my uplift.
I love it because, yes, we are stronger together. And this group that is seeking to do this is really a minority, but they're a very loud, vocal, and often violent minority. So it gives the appearance of them being greater in number than they actually are. And I love that you said leaning into love, just continuing the fight. And I want to thank you for having this conversation with me today. I'm looking forward to us having many more, because sometimes I do think that, the people that live in states like mine, it can become very, disheartening.
Yes.
And so I think it is important that we offer words of encouragement, but not just, but actionable things that we can do, small steps of, activism or defiance. And I think that it is important. So,
Yes, all the conversations we have in your advocacy arena, the goal that I think you do so well at articulating is to uplift each other and to overcome those tendencies towards cynicism or demoralization, and mitigate that with energy and laughter and enthusiasm, so that we are using those human characteristics that humans have, so we can function together, so we can support each other and enjoy each other's company. All of those attributes you harness in your arena, and I love that. I support that, and I'm proud to be part of it. And thank you, Dee. Thank you for talking to me today.
well, thank you for being here with us, and I want to wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy the celebratory lunch that
Thank
you're going to be having with your husband,
thank
and
you.
I bid you farewell until the next conversation that we have, my dear.
Thank you, Dee. Until next time.
All right, bye bye.
Bye bye.